The October 21st Parks and Rec Commission meeting to order. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Bob Karstens.
Here.
Russ Clark.
Here.
Peter Doran.
Here.
Bill Dwyer.
Here.
John Galbraith.
Here.
Scott Joseph is excused. Al Larson.
Here.
Kevin McEllier.
Here.
Dave Taylor.
Here.
Christine Maxbauer.
Here. This is our first opportunity for public comment. Kim, would you read the rules for public comment, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address the Parks and Recreation Commission, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. First, any person wishing to address the board shall state his name and address. Second, no person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson, at his or her discretion, may extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Thank you. At this time, is there any member of the public that would like to make comment? Seeing none, we will move on to special orders of business. First on the agenda is YMCA, status of the new facility.
Great.
Please.
My name's Tom Van Dynes, and I'm the CEO of the YMCA, and this is Dave Eitland, and he's our Director of Development and Marketing. For the last few years, we have been in a campaign to raise funds to build a new YMCA. It's a $12 million campaign. The new YMCA will be located out on Silver Lake Road. The campaign began in earnest in approximately 2007 and continued on until the end of 2008 when the economy hit bad and we kind of slowed down and did a feasibility study to see what the possibility was to continue the project at that time. We did complete the field phase of the project, so you may notice there are 2 full-size fields out there that can be used for all of our outdoor programs, including lacrosse, Pop Warner football, flag football, soccer, and other programs, and we began using those this last fall. So it was great to see the project in use. There's also parking out there and an entrance drive, neither of which are complete, but they are complete enough for use at this time. We also expanded the road, and we completed the site construction as well, so that all we need to do is raise the rest of the funds, and then we can plop the building down. What the rest of the phases, that's called the field phase that we've done so far, what the rest of the phases will consist in, we're calling the essential phase, and that includes a pool is the #1 item that we want to build, tennis facilities, and fitness. The pool will be a 6-lane competition length lap pool, 25 yards. It will also have on it a deep end diving well, and we'll also have a splash pad area for the young kids, a training pool, and then a hot tub spa as well. In fact, we brought along some pictures and a newsletter so you can have a look at what the plans are for the project. Along with that, we are currently running a daycare center on Woodmere, as well as a gymnastics center on Woodmere in the same building. 2 halves of the building are for those 2 separate things. Those eventually will move over as part of the master plan that's been approved by Garfield Township, will move over to that site as well. But this first phase will just be the major portions that I mentioned already. We will also be utilizing our current facility. We have sold our current facility several years ago to Garfield Township, and we will continue to use that site until we're able to move the gyms and the rest of the things we're doing at our current site over to the new facility. So we are building this in phases. Where we are right now is we've raised over $5.7 million in gifts towards this project, and if I didn't mention it, all of the $12 million that we need to raise is going to be coming from philanthropy through gifts. And so we have about $6.2 million more to raise in order to get the project complete. We intend to start construction when we get close to that $6.2 million more raised. So once we've raised, let's say, another 5.6 million or so is when we would start construction. 5.4 million is when we would start construction. That's more from where we're at right now. And again, I'll remind you, we've raised over 5.7 million at this point. So is it possible? Where are we at with the campaign? What's the timeline? The number one question we hear is, when are you going to build? And the first answer we always give is, we've started already, we've got the site construction done, and we're utilizing the property. But the real question is, when is the building going to be built? And the answer to that is when we raise the funds. As I mentioned, 2009 was a very down year, difficult year for us, so we had a feasibility study redone by a firm called Martz and Lundy. And Willard White was the doctor who did that feasibility study for us, and they said that, yes, you can complete the $6 million more you need to raise within approximately 18 to 24 months, that the climate is still good out there, and the sentiments are still good for the YMCA to complete that project. So we're hoping within the next 2 years is the timeline. After that, we're approximately 1 year of construction, and then we should be able to get into the building. So that's our update on the project. Dave, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I think you said what you need.
Anybody have any questions or comments for us?
Commissioner Doran?
It sounds very exciting. It's really great to be a real asset. I know you switched, because I met with Dave, I think, a while back, and you switched kind of your focus, and I think it was good to have those indoor tennis courts. This community needs affordable indoor tennis that they can use year-round. I think that we've got a big tennis community, and I hope that encourages additional donations. On the subject of tennis, what's the condition of your outdoor courts at the Logan's Landing site?
The condition?
Yeah. I mean, you're going to...
We're still using them, and we will continue to use them.
Is that something that after you moved could be continued to be used or offered?
We wholly suspect so.
Okay.
In fact, we're talking about, there originally 4 tennis courts were built there. We're using 2 for tennis now. I'm talking about outdoor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 2 were converted actually to pickleball. I don't know if you're familiar with pickleball. It's becoming very popular in this area especially. And we converted those other 2 courts to 3 pickleball courts. And we've talked about actually expanding that to more pickleball courts because of the great need right now for that.
Good.
So we intend to keep utilizing that property, I guess is what I'm saying.
Is my recollection correct that there are no outdoor tennis courts planned for the new facility?
That's not correct. There are outdoor tennis
okay.
courts as well as outdoor pickleball courts planned for the New Y
Great.
project as well.
Great,
Mhm.
good.
I should have mentioned that, but the
How do you spell pickle?
Pickle was
Like-
named after a guy's dog whose name was Pickle.
Like
Became
pickles that you eat?
P-I-C-K-L-E, yes, pickleball.
Why don't you explain what that is?
It's just like miniature tennis with a wiffle ball and a paddle.
They would not like that definition.
Commissioner Dwyer?
How about the summer day camp? What are the plans for that?
Well, actually, when we sold the property to Garfield Township, we got an agreement with them to continue to utilize that property that we're on right now, because it's beautiful, 40 acres wooded with fields and the recreational facilities that we mentioned. And so we'll be able to continue to use that for our day camps. It's a great site for day camp.
Yeah, it is. Is it still, it was a really large program back when I was.
Yes, it's still a really large program.
Okay, because
We
it's
have
pretty important to the
well
community.
over 100 kids every week involved in that program.
Okay, great.
All right. Anything else? Thank you very much for coming.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I wish you continued success on your fundraising.
Thanks, we need it.
Next, under special order of business, is Jen Seaman.
Good evening.
Hi, Jan.
I'm here today to talk about the contract, and some lifeguard wages and other information, or answer any other questions that you might have of me. We recently did complete contract negotiations with our Teamsters General Bargaining Unit, which that contract actually expired December 31st of 2009, and it just completed in August of this year. And it's a 4-year agreement, so it's from 2010 through the end of 2013. So with that agreement, there are scheduled wage increases as well as a premium share that comes into play starting January 1st of 2011 as well for those bargaining unit members. That bargaining unit currently has about 105 employees. So you have 2 lifeguards in the Parks and Rec Department, that are full-time lifeguards that are in that bargaining unit. Okay? There are currently 30 part-time lifeguards on the payroll, and they are not in the contract.
Jen, would you touch upon the portion of the contract where employees are now going to be paying a portion of their health insurance?
Sure. Yep. The employees will be paying, it's 4% if you participate in our wellness program, and 6% if you do not participate in the wellness program. That's starting January 1st of 2011, and then it goes up 2% to 6 and 8%, respectively, for 2012. So, the Wellness Initiative is a very simple online tool questionnaire, I will call it actually, a questionnaire on basically your own personal stats, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, various other information. We do not see that information in Human Resources. We do not know, we just know who filled it out. And we get aggregate summary and percentage, basically, information on what that information's showing us. And from there, we've actually learned this year that a good percentage of our employee population is pre-diabetic. So what can we do to, provide a lunch and learn or materials on diabetes and medical, management with that, prescriptions, there's various things that we can do. So that's why it's important for us on the wellness piece, because I think we can also impact the bottom line with our wellness program and the dollars that are going out for healthcare dollars if we also attack the wellness end of it as well. So, yeah. Does that help?
Commissioner Doran?
Jen, how do you think our lifeguard salaries, the full-time salaries, compare to other county employees of similar education and requirements?
Well, currently your lifeguards are in the D pay scale, and you can actually, I can provide you with the other jobs that are in that pay scale if you'd like.
Give us some examples.
Yep, absolutely.
Jen, do you have a handout that you want me to pass out for you?
No, it's okay. I kind of just talked about it. In a minute. Thanks, Jason. I have not talked about it, actually. Where's that wage? I'll tell you, and that's part of the document that I want to just share with you guys. One of your lifeguards was a lead lifeguard, and so now he's a regular lifeguard, if you will. And that when he was a lead lifeguard, he was in the F pay scale. And first of all, it goes from lowest to highest pay scale. It starts at A, being low end, and goes up from there. So he was in the F pay scale as a lead lifeguard, and then when that position was eliminated, was moved to a lifeguard, which is in the D pay scale. He was grandfathered into that, so his wage did not decrease by going into the D pay scale. Okay, so right now you guys are looking at, you have an employee, which there are a few scattered throughout the county that have been a similar situation. In this unit, I know of one other one that comes off the top of my head that was in a lead role that has been grandfathered into another role where they're basically, their wages are frozen until the wage scale catches up with them. So right now, the other D positions that are equivalent to lifeguard, you have an account clerk, appraiser 1, office specialist, a secretary, and a water and sewer technician 1. It's really hard to compare apples to apples with this unit because, as you can tell from some of those job titles, they're all over the place. They're in DPW, they're custodians, their HR folks are in this unit too. So it's really hard to compare. It's a general unit, and it's a very wide variety of skill sets that are in this unit. So if that helps. And then your lifeguard pay scale currently has, the D pay scale, I should say, starts at $11.22 an hour and goes to $16.28 an hour. And so you have one lifeguard that's at $16.28, and then you have one lifeguard that's at $18.35 because he was in the higher wage scale. So you've got some higher wages there because of that grandfathering issue. But like I said, that happens occasionally throughout the county. And then your part-time employees, which I do have a summary here, are paid anywhere from $8.38 an hour up to, the new pay scale that I worked with Kim on implementing earlier this year starts at $8.38 and goes to $9.59 an hour. But you have employees in anywhere on up to $10.34 an hour, because we did have some employees that had been here for quite a long time earning that $10.34 an hour that we did not want to. Kim felt it would be a big impact to them, and she might lose a tremendous amount of staff by decreasing their wages. So we just said effective February, going forward, everyone's been hired into that pay scale. So, and I have a summary of that for you here, so.
Commissioner Taylor?
Can you tell me what kind of raises they got over the next 4 years, what percent or they're?
Yep. It's 1.5% for 2011, 1.75 for 2012, and 1.5% for, what year am I at? 2013?
Yep.
Would you repeat those numbers again?
1.5 for 2011, 1.75 for 2012, and 1.5 for 2013.
Thank you.
I included that in this as well, so you guys can have something to refer back to.
But at the same time, employees are going to be making more of a contribution towards the cost of their health insurance. Any other questions for Jen? Thank you.
All right.
Next on our agenda is me, and I must apologize, but I'm not ready for this month. And I would have taken it off the agenda, but I didn't get over to Jason's office in time, so if you will allow me, I'm going to bring it back next month. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Next on the agenda, action on the consent calendar. The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will automatically be respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Receive and file. Number 1, Lutram Report Matrix. Number 2, Pool Membership Report. Number 3, Scholarship Committee Report. Number 4, Rules Committee Report. Number 5, Budget Report as of 10/12/11. Number 6, Communications. A, Barbara Bomer Baseball Program. B, Marilyn Dzelski, Twin Lakes Park. Number 7, Parks Commission Meeting Per Diems. Number 8, T-Base Third Quarter Field Maintenance Report. And I would like to add number 9, the draft meeting minutes from the RFQ Subcommittee, which are on your desk. And those are draft minutes only. They have not been approved. And number 10, also on your desk, the draft minutes for the Performance Metrics Subcommittee meeting. Are there any additional additions to the agenda? Jason?
There are 2 items on your information, or your additional information that you received tonight had a yellow header at the top of it. There were 2 pieces. There was a response to the Marilyn Dzelski letter, which is attached, and I asked our landscape architect for the Twin Lakes project to comment on that. That's included, as well as an additional piece of communication that we received from Carl Defoe on the 18th, so after the packet went out, but I wanted this included with this month's meeting.
Okay,
those-
so we will make number 11 the response to the Dzelski communication, and number 12, correspondence from Mr. Defoe.
There-
I got you. Thanks.
Referrals, none. Approvals, number 1, Parks Board regular minutes of September 23rd, 2010.
Could I remove something from the,
Yes.
excuse me, excuse me. There is no, I don't think we got a written Rules Committee report. So maybe we should take that off, and you could just give a verbal one, Christine?
Sure.
And also, I'd like to take the Barbara Bomer letter regarding the baseball program off.
Okay. Rules Committee report, we will make number 1 under items removed from consent calendar, and number 2, the Barbara Bomer communication. All right. I would entertain a motion to approve
Before
the
that,
consent.
then I would
Yes.
also ask that the minutes of September 23rd be removed from the consent calendar.
All right, that would be number 3. The Parks Board meeting, minutes, 9:23. All right. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended.
So moved?
Is there support?
Or,
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, I was
Roll call.
lost in
That's okay.
what motion, or what things were getting dropped down.
That's
so-
okay.
All right, Bob Karstens,
Yes.
Russell Clark,
Yes?
Peter Doran,
yes?
Bill Dwyer,
Yes.
John Galbraith,
Yes.
Al Larson,
Yes.
Kevin McEllier,
Yes.
Dave Taylor,
Yes.
and Christine Maxbauer.
Yes. Next on the agenda, items removed from the consent calendar. Number 1, Rules Committee report. We did have a Rules Committee meeting on Monday at 9 a.m., and we really took a look at all of the rules that we have to date. We looked for any conflicts in those rules, and we didn't see any. We had a discussion as to whether or not this subcommittee should meet on a monthly basis. And it was the consensus of the members in attendance that we ought to meet probably biannually, unless our director sees a reason where we have a need to address rules in a certain park. So right now, this subcommittee meets monthly, and so what we are looking for from this board is a consensus that the Rules Committee meet only twice a year, or as necessary if the director feels it's necessary.
You want a motion to that effect?
I would love it.
I'll make such a motion.
I
All right.
support the motion.
Discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
One of the reasons why we're reluctant to look at any new rules, too, is because under the law, as you may recall, this was discussed before, the rules of the county for parks are misdemeanor issues, rather than civil infractions, like if you get a speeding ticket, or even if you violate a minor part of the zoning ordinance, you're not going to be charged with a misdemeanor, you're going to be charged with a civil infraction. And so, until and if we can get that law changed, and our representatives have been asked, and I think are working on it, we are reluctant to make garden variety things that we don't want to happen, misdemeanors. If there's something big, like that's dangerous to the safety of persons or property, as we recently did with the Nature Education Reserve, the committee will recommend a rule in that case, but we want to wait until the laws change to look at some of the other more pedestrian rules that we had been examining.
Okay.
Jason's got a question.
Yes, Jason?
I just wanted to thank Pete for bringing that up. Within that packet you received on your desk, there are the letters that were sent to Senators Allen and State Rep Schmidt. So those are included in that packet. You guys, this board made a unanimous motion in support of those letters being sent, I believe, in July of this past year. So those letters are just included for your viewing.
All right. Next on the agenda, the Barbara Bomer baseball communication. Mr. Doran?
Yeah, first I want to state that, I think it's a very difficult job to run a baseball program. If you've ever been an umpire or been at some of the games, you can see some of the arguments and vehement differences of opinion that break out among either usually not the kids, but usually the parents or the coaches. So you're not going to make everybody happy all of the time when you're running a baseball program. We got the evaluations on the baseball program, and I thought generally they were pretty good, especially considering it was the first year. But this letter is critical of the baseball program, and I believe one of the advantages to the public in having the county run it is that we will address criticisms. This letter was addressed to Dennis Aloya, so I would like to know what Dennis thinks about it. I'm sure he's going to look at it, he's going to evaluate it, he's going to weigh all the different sides, talk to Jason as well as the other participants, and I would like to know as a commission, get a response from Dennis as to his evaluation of this. Should the program be changed in some way? Should there be a formal mechanism for receiving suggestions and evaluating those suggestions in a rational manner? Because Coach A may think that the best thing to do is to, have kids slide, and the whole rest of the coaches don't think it's a good idea to have kids slide. So there should be a mechanism that we have as a public body, public entity, to take a look at legitimate complaints and address them. So I would make a motion that we ask Dennis Aloya if he could let us know, look into this, and let us know what his examination has revealed and what he thinks of this complaint, and are there ways of resolving it if it's justified.
All right. Is there support for the motion?
I'll support the motion for discussion.
All right. Commissioner Karstens?
It's open for discussion.
Yes, it is.
My reaction to the letter is, though it was interesting, it was mostly hearsay. And I don't think you want to change a program based on hearsay. And so, because of the lack of substantive information, it was interesting, and it indicated that this person felt that there were some things wrong that might need correcting. But because there was no substantive data, that it's not something that necessarily calls for action. But anyway, that was my reaction to it.
Commissioner Dwyer?
I have a question. Has there been any further communication with the letter writer?
No, there hasn't. This letter was the letter that was questioned last month for not being included in your packet. First I saw this was when Commissioner Max Bauer sent it to me on the 24th of last month. I have not contacted Mrs. Bomer.
Do you know if Dennis has?
I don't know that Dennis has.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, and it's not in front of me, Dennis did respond to the email, or did respond to the letter and stated that it would be addressed by the Parks Commission, that this would be addressed by this board.
That we would address it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it states, I guess Dennis's response, I did find it. Mrs. Bamer, thank you for the correspondence. We'll look into these issues through the County Park Board, who oversees the program. Thank you. And that was the limit to his response.
That's the top of this page here.
Right.
Yeah.
Just the very
Well,
last.
I guess that I'd withdraw the motion and I guess make one that we look into it then, if that's what Dennis wants us to do.
Is the support withdrawn?
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to comment on that while I welcome Administrator Aloya's advice, I'm afraid he's going to kick it back to us to get our advice on it.
All right. Commissioner Doran, is your motion then to have this body address this?
Well, yeah, I think what I would like to see, I'll just throw this out without making it a motion.
All right.
So maybe have a couple commissioners and Dennis Aloya, who is the director's supervisor, and we have this relationship, but he's his boss. But have a couple of commissioners that meet with Dennis and figure out a way to proceed to evaluate this and see whether they think it's, has merit, or whether it doesn't, whether it's based on just hearsay and doesn't really have merit. And if it does have some merit, how can we correct the meritorious complaint?
All right. And who would like to volunteer? Commissioner Doran.
Can I get clarification then on exactly what the motion is here?
There
This
is
not a motion.
There is
no motion.
No, there's no motion.
Okay.
I'm just wondering, because if you read the letter carefully, it constantly makes reference to things that someone else said, except for that opinion or its statement that they were dissatisfied and wouldn't continue with the program. But there's no objective evidence that you can really grab hold of. But there's a lot of hearsay. And so,
But the letter is signed, and it's not an anonymous letter.
right,
And-
but all of the other claims about the other, there's no names given, and I'm wondering why the other people who were slighted in some way didn't come forward as well. You know, and so, anyway, that's,
I don't know, but Commissioner Doran, is there anyone else that would like to go with him?
I'd like to.
Commissioner Taylor. So we will let Commissioner Doran and Commissioner Taylor meet with Dennis Aloya and report back to the Parks Board.
Well, if it's okay with the commission, then I'll make a motion to have a ad hoc committee of Commissioner Taylor and myself to meet with Dennis to discuss the Barbara Bomer letter and report back to this commission.
Support?
Discussion? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same. Motion carries. All right. Thank
Can I
you.
get who first and seconded that motion one more time?
I firsted.
Okay? And the second?
Clark seconded.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda.
Madam Chair, I asked to pull the minutes. There are 4 very, very minor clerical errors, and perhaps maybe a discussion that, you know, in good conscience, I can't approve these minutes with these minor errors unless the consensus of the board said, you know, those are acceptable errors. So let me point out the 4 errors. Page 43, it says others present. Marilyn Zielinski is listed. Just like tonight, Marilyn is not here. Kim Moore is performing those duties.
Well, you're right, Marilyn was not here.
Next, page 45, budget hearing minutes. It says that the Parks and Recreation fund balance to balance the 2010 budget. That's an error. It's the 2011 budget.
You are correct.
Under number 2, budget hearing minutes. That was all relative to the 2011 minutes. If citizens are reviewing these, it looks like we're being reactive and we're correcting the 2010 minutes rather than, budget rather than the 2011. That's 2 of 4. Item 3 of 4, page 46, a minor spelling under 3, the pool RFQ. That was a motion to rescind,
Yes,
RESCIND, rather than resend
yes.
the ordinance.
It
That could be
was.
confused, to resend it to a different committee. And the 4th and final correction, under number 3, Twin Lakes, Jones reported the last sentence should reflect, due to the economy, and add outdated DNR rec plan. There are few sources available.
I'm sorry, what was that last one?
The last sentence, there was discussion, not only is it due to the economy, but also because of our outdated or expired DNR rec plan. Because of those 2 items, there are few sources available for granting.
what page are you on, Kevin?
Page 50, item 3, Twin Lakes.
That would help if you give you page numbers.
Thought I was running.
You did on the other ones, you just didn't on that last one.
So, you know, I saw those.
Yes,
Should we let those go for
No.
the future, or?
Marilyn was
Okay.
not here.
Okay.
You are exactly right. We should correct our minutes.
So
All
I-
right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Discussion? All those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Number 1, under old business, board governance policy. We spoke briefly at our last Parks Board meeting, and Commissioner Larson has volunteered to bring forth some initial governance policies for this Parks Commission to consider. Can I have consensus from the board that that his work is greatly appreciated, and we can ask him to move forward and bring some policies in front of the commission for consideration?
Here, here.
Absolutely.
All right. Hearing, hear, hear. All right.
What are the policies regarding to?
Governance policies. He's
Just-
just going to put together a package for us to look at and to consider. All right. Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Larson. Yes?
There was a reference in our packet somewhere. I think it was in reference to the relevance and whether or not the state plan, the DNRE plan, was current, that a new requirement of the state plan was that there would be more linkage with the population we serve as a basis for whatever is done with that plan. And so to come forward with a bunch of policies without that basis, I just, you can do it, but to me, it would have a lot more value if it had that substrate that it's based on. And so I just have some concern that, what will be the basis of the policies? They'll be derived from, that's all.
Jason?
Bob, I think what you're referring to is later in the packet, I talk about a conversation I had with Linda Hegstrom at the DNRE in regards to master plans. The policies that she's talking about and the changes in the guidelines for that plan, that's a tentative change. She doesn't know exactly when that's going to take effect. It may not take effect. I just stated that in that narrative. So those changes, we're not at a point to base anything on those changes. We kind of have to move forward with the guidelines as they currently are.
Okay.
All right. Next on the agenda, proposed changes in board bylaws.
I'll move that the proposed changes be adopted. The changes are to change the agenda packets from Monday proceeding to 7 days proceeding, and to allow the secretary to delegate to other qualified persons the duties or tasks of the secretary.
Is there support for that motion?
I'll support.
Discussion. We have a motion and support. All those in favor to adopt these changes in our bylaws, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, the DNRE Master Plan.
At our last commission meeting, I was asked to review the master plan and talk with the Department of Natural Resources and Environment as to whether or not making some small changes or requesting an extension would be a permissible way for our DNR document to be valid. I spoke with Linda Hegstrom, as I mentioned in the packet information, and she said for us to, there are no extensions, and for us to be approved and have a valid master plan or a current master plan, we'd have to go through the full approval process through the Department of Natural Resources and Environment. She also mentioned that there may be some guidelines for that plan that may be changed in the next few weeks, but that's something that she couldn't provide confirmation that yes, that was going to happen, or no, it was not going to happen. So I wanted to report that back to the commission. I was asked to report back, and that's kind of where we're at with the current DNR document. I would suggest moving forward, and based on strategic planning, you guys have given me a very clear strategic priority to move forward with that. So.
Jason, is there anything that we need to do? I remember when I went to the Parks Conference that the state of Michigan people that spoke said that that public input is extremely important to that plan? Do we need to schedule any kind of public hearings?
We've already done the public hearings because this process has been started. But because of the length of time that's expired since our last, I would recommend moving forward with additional public input and actually starting the public input process over. The new information, as well as we can still utilize the old information, although I wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket. I think it is something that we need to explore, and for just for transparency's sake, in order to get more input from the community, I think that would be important, and that's something that should come from my office.
Okay, and Commissioner Clark?
Yes, the DNR guidelines do require that all public input be within 2 years of the adopting of your plan. So a good share of the public input we've received in the past will not be valid. And I wholeheartedly agree we should go through that process.
Okay, Commissioner Doran?
Could we get a work plan with a timeline, maybe 12 months, to show us what we're supposed to be doing and how we're going to proceed? Do you want a special committee to do this? When are the public hearings going to be? I mean, how do we attack this particular project?
I think this would be a more rapid process if it was not done in a committee. I can take this on. You guys provided some strategic direction last Monday to put together a work plan in a week. I'm not able to get that. I wasn't able to get that completed, although that's something that would be well within the work plan based on the strategic
Could you do
priorities
it by
you've
the
given.
next meeting?
I hope to, yes.
Okay, and I would recommend you consult with Mr. Clark here to come up with that and how we present it to the public when we have the public hearings or public meetings, and what's going to be on our website. I think that ought to be utilized and things like that. But I'd like to see a beginning and an end, in a middle, and see how we're actually going to tackle this.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
just a quick
Mahalia?
question directed at staff, if I could. I'm not clear on when did the DNRE plan expire? How old is that information?
2008.
Expired in 2008.
2008, but Kayla was working on it in 2009?
Correct.
And we're just, okay. I trusted that Kayla was working on a valid plan, but that's the hand we're dealt. Thank you.
Commissioner Carstens, did you have anything?
Just a query as much as about the most effective way to access the community values and participation. It seems to me that if your public input is confined to a meeting that people can attend, that's preventing a really wide segment of your population from weighing in or participating in the process. And so some kind of, but I don't know, I'm not a statistician, and I haven't had any classes in terms of how to garner public opinion effectively. But if surveys are deemed as effective as a meeting where just a small segment shows up, it would be nice, I think it would be nice to utilize whatever's the broadest and most effective way of getting that public participation in terms of their opinions and values. And so, to me, a survey would suggest more value to the extent it would reach a broader spectrum of your population than a meeting in a room at the Civic Center or something like that occurred just on one evening. So,
And surveys, when I attended that session at the Parks Conference, surveys, they were quite creative as to how the surveys were done. There was one park organization that stood at a farmer's market with a clipboard and just asked people questions. Just stood there on farm market day. Yes, we could put a survey on
the website.
on the website, we could put a survey in the Grand Traverse Insider, something like that, yeah.
And it's really easy to database the results just in a Word format within the databases for.
Is there any literature that compares different methods of getting public participation in terms of its end product value, or?
I think
I mean, in the past, if we were running one individual park, we would go to the end user, and to those customers to that park. For us, I think we could go to any aspect of the community at large and get good cross sections of the population.
It seems like a no-brainer to me that the broader spectrum that you can draw to get your public participation, the better.
I think we should defer to the director and ask him to bring in his work plan, what his suggestions are for public input, and we'll take a look at it next month. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
All right. Next on the agenda, Civic Center Master Plan.
This is something I brought to this commission last month, and I came back. I'm coming back today to give you an update. I spoke with our own Russ Clark, and he and I have had several discussions related to planning, strategic planning, master planning, park-specific master plans. And in our discussions and his understanding of how important the Civic Center is to the community, he's offered his company's services free of charge to complete the Civic Center master plan. In exchange for the $15,000 that was allocated in 2010 to be utilized for improvements from that suggested by that master plan, moving forward into 2011. And this is something I'm bringing it to this commission. I've talked with both Bob Cooney as well as Dean Bott in regards to this, and to make sure that this is an appropriate relationship to enter into and an appropriate agreement. And I wanted to bring it back to this commission for discussion. And right now, I'd like to, first and foremost, no matter what the commission says, thank Russ for his dedication to Parks and Recreation and his dedication in his discussion and even doing this project. So, thank you, Russ. Attached is a resolution. It was agreed by both Bob Cooney and Dean Bott that moving forward with a resolution from this committee would be the best way for this to continue moving forward if this commission's in agreement.
Russ?
If I may speak in regards to this, my passion in offering this service to do this master plan is to make sure that the money gets spent at the Civic Center, do some of the much-needed improvements, but the master plan would dictate priority and what may be the highest priority through that public process. There are needs at that property for some improvements, and the intent of having a master plan created is to not only set the big framework and the big picture, but to prioritize physical improvements from large scale to small scale and the cost related to those improvements. And this may be a seed opportunity to get something developed at the property that the community and this Recreation Commission would like to have happen.
Commissioner Doran?
Seems like every month the community gets a gift from our Clark and Associates for the advancement of Parks and Recreation. So this is great. This is just terrific. Thanks. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
I support the motion.
Okay.
And just a point of clarification discussion, two things. I'm assuming that, of course, this master plan for the Civic Center will also be able to dovetail with the DNR recreation plan.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming that, but I just, and then I'm assuming your frugality, but the last sentence regarding the promotion, reproduction charges, what does that mean?
Well, I don't want to put the cost for all the copies that may
Okay.
be requested of my office to produce this process. So I'd like to be reimbursed for the out-of-pocket expenses.
That's very minor. I just didn't want to make any assumptions again. Good, that's what I anticipated. I'm in support of the motion.
Just to let you all know, I did speak to Dennis Aloya about this, and this will need to go in front of the county board, because the county board does have final authority when it comes to earmarking money.
Okay.
I just wanted to let everyone know. Commissioner Doran?
Can we get this, my understanding right, we got to spend the 15,000 this year?
No, that's part of that, it's part of that earmark, and as Commissioner
No, we
Maxbauer-
would, as the county board would allocate that money, dedicate it to be spent on the Civic Center master plan.
Okay. All right, when does our fiscal year end?
December 31st.
Okay, all right, so.
All right. We have a motion.
Is the motion to recommend approval or approval?
I have to approve the resolution.
That's what I suppose.
All right. Additional discussion?
That's interesting because, all right, so Bob Cooney suggested that we do a resolution for this, but our relationship to the county commission then, I mean, in general, the way I see things happening is Russ will come up with this master plan, and we will discuss it,
Yes.
we'll approve it, and we'll recommend that the 15,000 be spent on that. That's as far as it would go, right? Or do we recommend that the whole, I mean, there'd be the budget process, which would be, okay, we have these 25 different needs at the Civic Center, and we are going to put those in our budget for such and such a year. But specifically, we have the 15,000 that we want to spend on this.
Yes.
And the end result is that we make a recommendation to the county commission to spend $15,000 on this. So I guess we are just going to approve the resolution
Yes.
because the county commission has nothing to do with this resolution. Am I correct on that?
You're correct that the county commission doesn't have anything to do with this resolution at this particular point in time. This resolution, after it is passed by this body, will be presented to the county board. Then the county board will agree or not agree to this resolution.
And they'll pass their own resolution.
Yes.
So should we make this motion subject to approval of the county board?
No, I don't think that's necessary.
They would ask whether whether this board
I
approved
think
this
just
resolution.
stating that this is this body's recommendation, this is our resolution, we are certainly able to make those resolutions, and pass it on to the county board, and let them take action. All right?
Is there going to be a written agreement? I'd like to add here that the president of the Parks and Recreation Commission be authorized to sign a written agreement.
And-
I support the amendment.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Abstain.
I'm sorry. Roll call, please.
Bob Karstens?
Yes.
Russ Clark's abstaining. Peter Dorn?
Yes.
Bill Dwyer?
Yes?
John Galbraith?
Yes.
Al Larson?
Yes.
Kevin McElligott?
Yes.
Dave Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Maxbauer?
Yes. Next on the agenda, Twin Lakes caretaker. And I did ask for this information. We pay $57,000 a year, I believe. Jason, was the amount that you showed in our packet last month for pay and benefits for this position. We provide the caretaker a place to live. And I am just wondering if this isn't something we should look at bidding out. And if the consensus is no, it's no, and if it's yes, it's yes. So I'm looking for thoughts. Commissioner Clark.
My feeling is, having watched this process over several years, that there is a real value in having someone on that property 24/7 because of its location and the amount of residential development around that property. I feel that there is a real need to have someone on site, and then the types of user groups that use the facility often come up with demands once they arrive on property that can only be met efficiently by someone being there versus having to call someone in from the Civic Center to take care of specific needs that may be unforeseen. I know there's a cost, and I also know that is one of the properties that can generate revenue for the county Parks and Recreation system. It's also in dire need of some good marketing efforts on the part to help generate those revenues. And but the basic question on, in my opinion, there is a real value in having a caretaker on the property, and I know the present folks that are involved there have been doing an excellent job for several years.
Jason, is this a union position?
This is a non-unionized position, and as I mentioned in my my narrative in regards to this, the caretaker out there functions partially as a Parks and Recreation employee, partially as a facilities management employee. One of the additional pieces of information that you received in your packet today was a letter from Danny Brown regarding this position and the importance of having the on-site caretakers there. This is something important. That's somewhat of a secluded park. There's not a lot of, you can't see the majority of the park from the road, which creates a security issue if we don't have someone there 24 hours a day. As Russ said, he's very correct that once groups get there, they have specific needs or specific requests. At all hours of the evening, we have several wedding receptions that last till midnight. We've got Bayside Travelers, which is a monthly group that comes in and they do a variety of different types of dances in there, and they have needs late into the evening. The other question, or the other issue that was brought up last month is whether or not the park slows down during the winter. And I put some tables in your packet that hopefully you've had an opportunity to review. And we had 146 days of scheduled activity at the park between September 2009 and September 2010. And we hosted approximately 8,128 visitors that were scheduled at those rental times. And of that, 3,092 of them were in the winter months. We're in months between November 1st through April 30th. So the park doesn't necessarily slow down in the winter. It is a little bit faster paced in the summer, simply because we have an increase in day users traveling to the park to utilize the beachfront. We just invested $550,000 to redevelop 4.5 acres of that park that would be subject to major vandalism without someone on site 24 hours a day. So there are a variety of reasons, and I don't know if Russ may be able to talk about this from a historic point of view a little bit better than I, but before the current caretakers lived on site, the caretakers that lived there before that did not care for the park up to its fullest potential. And I think that was one of the things that led to some discussion and some very, very frustrated citizens in Grand Traverse County as to whether or not that park was going to maintain its status as a county park or whether it was going to become a library for Long Lake Township. Russ, if you're comfortable, could you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, at one point there was in a previous budget crisis, a comment made by a county commissioner that perhaps the way to help reduce some of the cost of the county was to give the county park to Long Lake Township. And only to find out later that the legalities of how the gift came to the county, that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
But it did create quite a stir in the community, and the folks who helped originally invest and create what was originally a 4-H camp came forth, and a lot of the original folks to help fund what it is today came forth and said it needs to stay as a county park, it needs to stay available, but make it more accessible to the local user, because it was being focused primarily for downstate group use at that point in time. And so the culture of the park changed from being closed off to local use, day use, when there was not a camp activity going in there, to being welcoming day use activities by local residents when it's not a closed campus. Again, when it's a closed campus, when there's a group in there spending the night, and there has to be, by state statute, some security measures, it's not available for day use by the public during those days that is really booked for a camp. And the master plan for this property does try and address that. The master plan does call for a future new access coming in off from Straight Road with a day use activity on the north end of the lake, allowing the current campus area to be used as a camp area and be able to utilize more efficiently the 170 acres. That's obviously an investment that needs to come forth, but the master plan does try and address the dual use that's needed for that particular park.
Commissioner Doran?
I'm not in favor of bidding it out. I think that we should treat public property with the same care that we would treat our own property. If I had a motel or I had a campground and I had good caretakers and they'd done a good job, the last thing I would want to do would be to bid it out, especially if the bid was based on price. There's things more, sometimes more important here than just price. So I'm not in favor of bidding it out. I think we've got what seems to be a good situation, and we ought to try to hold on to it.
Okay. Commissioner Karstens?
He said exactly, but better than I could, what I was thinking. And if this guy no longer is around, then maybe that might be a time to bid it out. But I think because of the uniqueness of the situation, if you have somebody who is really doing the kind of job this guy is, you've got something special. So, because that is a special place.
All right. Commissioner Larson?
Russ, do you have any background information on how the rate of compensation was agreed upon? Is that a stable figure? Is that a negotiated rate? Does it creep up every year or so?
I don't have that knowledge.
Jason, you know anything about that?
That moves up with non-exempt. That moves up according to the same rate that department heads and other non-exempt employees. No, there is a group of employees within the county, and this would have been a better question for Jen, who are not represented by unions, and this position is not a unionized position, that receive raises every year associated with whatever the other employees in that same classification. I want to say this increases approximately maybe 1.5% moving forward, similar to what Jen had mentioned for the Teamsters, because the county tries to negotiate contracts very similar to each other.
Commissioner
So
Dwyer?
it does go up, but it's not moving up at step level, which is ballpark $1,500 to $2,000 between steps. Does that answer your question?
Partially, yes.
I think part of your question was how is his salary set to begin with? And I think he's probably got a job description, much like the other one that's in this packet, and the county personnel department determined that based on this job description, here's the salary that he gets. Is that correct? Okay.
Commissioner Taylor?
It says Jim and Barb Mattson, do they both work there, or is?
Yes.
They both?
They both work there. Jim is a full-time employee. They're the main caretaker. I prefer not to talk about the specific people. The main caretaker is a full-time position. There is a part-time caretaker, and it happens to be his wife. She's paid an hourly rate. I think that's budgeted about $8,000 per year to help out when necessary with specific setups, or if there is a back-to-back setup that Jim or the caretaker doesn't have time to turn around by himself.
She's not a union employee either.
Correct.
Who sets her wage?
That was part of the initial agreement when the caretakers moved in, and it moves up according the same way.
Commissioner Galbraith?
Yeah, just speaking from experience of somebody who's lived inside a outdoor recreation facility for 5 seasons. Free housing is, definite benefit, but be careful what you wish for, because it can become a prison. So, just one of those things that it's a blessing and a curse. And I also wanted to reiterate, as far as future development, man, we've got a wonderful asset there that is underutilized and could be a huge revenue generator for the park system.
I agree with you. I think it could be a huge revenue generator. Okay,
So let's keep them happy.
I'm hearing the consensus is to, that if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Okay. Moving on, number 6, approval of expenditures.
This is another item I was asked about at our last meeting, that I asked the opinion of both Bob Cooney and Dean Bott, our finance director, about whether or not it's appropriate or necessary for Parks and Recreation Commission to approve expenditures. I've included emails from both Dean and from Bob, and I'll just read Bob's email. Approval of expenditures by the Parks and Rec Commission is not required. The Board of Commissioners is required by statute to approve all claims and expenses. However, there is no reason the Commission cannot take it upon themselves to review expenditures. As for per diem, those are provided, and this continues into another question that I asked Bob. A couple other items I just wanted to bring to the Commission's attention. Often, we pay bills every 2 weeks. So for approval of expenditures by this Commission, it would actually slow down our payment process. It is something that is regulated. It goes through county claims and accounts, so we follow the proper policies within the county. And I guess that's the answer I received when I talked to Bob, and I think this is a process that moves well, and it allows us to be streamlined with other departments in the county, and again, if it's not broke, I don't see a reason to fix it.
Madam Chair, let me just comment. In my personal opinion, it appears this may have gotten blown out of proportion. The discussion was initiated to receive and file per diems. I don't recall that anybody wanted to hold up or didn't trust expenditure approval. So in my opinion, what started this discussion was receiving, filing the per diems and not necessarily approving them. I know Commissioner Doran wanted some clarification. Perhaps it was reflected in the last minute to ask the prosecutor's office what is the process, but I don't think any commission member went so far as to say we want to approve all expenditures. That's the director's job.
Commissioner Doran?
Yeah, Kevin's right. I wanted to know that we didn't have that duty. I was pretty sure that wasn't our obligation, but we're now a bona fide Parks and Recreation Commission under the statute, so I wanted to make sure that we, weren't ignoring some duty, and that Bob specifically looked at that, and this is a good answer.
Okay. All right. Moving on to new business. Number 1, Maple Bay Survey.
The Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy, who's partnered with us on a variety of different tasks related to Maple Bay, they were doing some work out at the property that they have out there. And when they walked the southern boundary of the western portion of this property, they found what they perceived to be an issue with the signage that we have out there. We have a large sign at the south end of this property that has an arrow pointing to the north that says Maple Bay Public Park this way, private property heading south. It's a large, simple sign so boaters can see it as they boat in, and to not interrupt our neighbors. Unfortunately, while the Land Conservancy was out there, they saw what they thought was a problem in that sign being placed about 683 feet too far to the north. I did some research and found that the sign originally was thought to be placed about 30 feet to the north of the southern boundary of that property. And it was placed 30 feet, what was anticipated to be 30 feet to the north, simply to create a buffer zone between what was actually private property and county property. But that sign was placed in error in 2002. So I had some concerns and originally wanted in the budget to survey all of our properties, 2 properties per year, and that got taken out of the budget, of course. The challenge we had with this, I was concerned about 30 feet I was worried about 30 feet becoming property of that private subdivision due to adverse possession, and later found out it was actually 683 feet. I talked with the Land Conservancy. They agreed to pay for a survey of the western portion of that property for the southern boundary and the northern boundary of the line, or northern boundary of the property, as long as this commission in the county would support sending letters to the homeowners to the south, because this most greatly impacts the homeowners to the south, and that we would be guaranteed assistance from the prosecuting attorney's office, essentially, to enforce that border. So I'm bringing this to the commission. The sign has been moved, and the homeowner association president for Orchard Shores has been notified that a new survey's been done, and the sign was placed in the wrong spot in 2002. So I'd like support from this commission for us to actually enforce the proper boundary line in this park in the event this is a contested situation moving forward.
Commissioner McEllier.
Thanks, Madam Chair. You're absolutely right, Jason. Prescriptive easements are very problematic. If that land is occupied for 15 years, it becomes by right their property. So could you clarify, is this the blessing you have of the prosecuting attorney's office? They want to do it in this fashion. The first step is to send every homeowner a letter?
No, for us to enforce it, that was asked of me by the Land Conservancy in order for them to pay the fee to do the survey. In advance of this meeting, I did talk to Bob Cooney.
Good.
He said that he would be fully supportive of that. He'd be willing to help out with it. I wanted to bring it to this commission in order to have it on public record and to make sure this commission knows about it in the event that this turns into a bigger issue down the road.
Commissioner Doran.
So far, I haven't heard anything that would indicate that there was going to be a controversy. Do you have any indication that the boundary line may be disputed by the property owners to the south?
I don't think it will be disputed because we've reached out to the president of the Homeowners Association.
I think you should be very, very careful if you're going to write a letter. And I don't think it ought to come from the prosecuting attorney's office. If I got a letter from the prosecuting attorney's office, I'd be nervous. I think this letter ought to be very neighborly and friendly. We are neighbors with it looks like Orchard Shores is the subdivision.
That's right.
And we have no indication that there's any issue. We had a sign that wasn't on the boundary line and we moved it. So we're not saying anybody can't continue to walk across it or anything like that, I don't think.
Correct.
So,
Commissioner Karstens.
Was this suggestion in any way a suggestion on the part of the Conservancy?
The Conservancy asked that we get the prosecuting attorney involved.
Because in some degree, they're because of the preservation agreements to secure their property and a lot of other properties in this area, in some degree, I think that they've taken upon or maybe even they're asked to ask as kind of legal custodians of the agreements that have been made to preserve. And so I wouldn't think that they would ask you for something that they don't feel is somehow necessary. And it would just be faster. But anyway, I was just curious. I don't know. I just thought that generally speaking that they often, or more than not, act as the custodians of conservation easements. That's it, and the protectors of them for this area. And they were certainly germane to saving the property. And so I wouldn't see them as asking for something that is onerous in any way. That's all.
Okay.
I would make
Anything else?
a motion. Oh.
Go ahead.
Because they asked for it, I would make a motion to request the prosecuting attorney assist proper enforcement of Maple Bay border with the landowners of Orchard Shores subdivision, presently and in the future if necessary.
Is there support?
I'll second that.
Discussion?
But-
Commissioner Larson?
I do think that Commissioner Doran's comments are well placed, and so I would be fine with them assisting. I think perhaps it could be on Park and Rec letterhead, and we could propose a letter or have control over the wording that would be neighborly and much, so that we ensure that there is no aggressive tenor to the letter, and then we could copy them or even get them to sign off on it if we feel that's necessary, so that we send it out in a neighborly fashion. I think that's a very wise idea, Pete.
Okay.
Could Christine take a look at the letter before it goes out?
That's up to this commission. I think it will be looked at by the Conservancy, it'll be looked at by the prosecuting attorney's office, and I'll probably be drafting the letter with their endorsements. So it's up to this commission.
Yeah, the more eyes you get to look at it, the better. It's not part of the motion, but I'd urge you to have Christine take a look at it, maybe your wife too, just to make sure that there's nothing in there that can be read the wrong way.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
My wife?
Yeah.
As an example.
When Bo,
Just,
I'll have Commissioner Maxwell look at it.
when Tom Monahan got a letter from Bo Schembechler's attorney, talking about Bo's rights as the manager of the Tigers, Monahan fired him on the spot because he misread the letter. The letter was published, I read it, it was a common letter a lawyer would write, and I realized people read things differently. And so I just would urge you to have an outside pair of eyes, take a look at it to see what their reaction would be if they were a homeowner and they got this kind of letter, to make sure it's the communication that you want is really what's being accomplished.
As I mentioned, I'll have Commissioner Maxbauer look at it if
Great.
this board
all
wants that.
right.
Great.
Okay. We have a motion. We've had discussion. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Easling Pool budget adjustments. Jason?
The next item I have for the commission is an item that Dean Bott asked for me to bring to the commission just as a suggestion, just to keep the commission in the loop. This is something that's going to move on to, he's going to take this to Ways and Means. It's a budget adjustment. It's a budget adjustment for full part-time and FICA within the Easling Pool. These are all line item transfers, reducing several. On the right-hand side, you can see it's reducing several line items and then increasing the line items to the left. This is something that's common towards the end of the budget year. This is something that we have to do, and it's something that is ultimately approved by Ways and Means Committee. So he wanted me to bring this to this commission to kind of keep you informed of what's going on, and this is related to some of the challenges we had early in the year related to part-time line items, or the part-time wages line item in the budget. So I wanted to bring that to this commission to keep you informed of that change.
Jason, I've got a question on one of the line items.
Sure.
Under other supplies, you have $17,500 budgeted for other supplies for the pool.
Correct.
And you're moving $3,000 of that. You've spent $8,000. So I guess I'm asking, was there something specific?
I had $10,000 budgeted in that line item specifically for some outdoor storage sheds for our chlorine that we store in the pool. When we looked those up, Danny Brown and I looked for those last year leading into the budget. They were budgeted as part of the budget for $10,000. Since then, we found some other very similar outbuildings that will fit our need to store chemicals. for about 3,000. So the reduction,
Ah,
so we saved $7,000.
Okay.
And that's why
I
you see that.
I thought I remembered that you were looking for
And
storage buildings.
The storage buildings have been,
They've been ordered.
they've been ordered. We have not paid for those, so you wouldn't see those going out of that expenditure line item yet.
Okay. Do you need a motion?
No, I don't.
All right. Next on the agenda, the aquatics report.
I won't go through and read the report for you, but I do want to let you know that Trunk or Treat is happening next Friday night. It has been advertised all over the place. I'm actually getting a little nervous because a lot of people are telling me they're coming, but I'm not so sure everyone's going to bring their cars full of candy. So I'm trying to get the word out that we want cars with candy there too, not just kids showing up to trick or treat. So I'm trying to get that message across, and I would love to see any and all commissioners come and participate in that event as well, so.
Are there any questions for Kim on her report? I have one, Kim. I'm noticing you said pool use request, and I appreciate that you always bring those to us every month. Scuba divers are requesting pool use. However, their group is so small, they are not, and they're not affiliated with one of the local shops, so paying the rental space is not feasible for them. What is the charge for the rental space? What were they looking for?
Well, what we've allowed at this point is it's the couple people that I've talked to, it's just a couple guys that are getting ready to head down south, and they want to make sure that their buddy knows what they're doing with the scuba equipment so
Yeah.
they can go down and be safe together.
Uh-huh.
The one guy is a certified trainer. And so I just allowed him to come in at an open swim and kind of do that. It's a lot of equipment. Some of our open swims can be hit and miss depending upon the weather. If it's raining outside, it's probably a bad day for him to come in with the equipment because that's everybody's coming in to swim. If it's gorgeous outside, sure, no problem, come in. We hit it luckily because we've had a really nice fall thus far that he's been able to come into the open swims and just drop in, pay the drop-in fee and be able to do that. But if it starts picking up more, it's going to be something where they will need to rent pool space because we just can't take
Okay.
that away from the members. So
I was just curious.
yeah, just one of those things that I wanted to make you guys aware of.
The other item on here, question on your staffing. You've hired one new lifeguard WSI, and you're hoping to have 2 new lifeguards come in the next few weeks. At last count, didn't we have 30 already?
We do. Because of union contracts, they can only work up to 18 hours. So a lot of our staff, college-age, high school-age students, some of those individuals, like right now, volleyball. I've got one staff, it's volleyball season. So between schoolwork and volleyball,
Okay,
she's on our payroll, but she's just popping in and out as needed and
All
for
right, well,
in-services.
I was just kind of curious, because, it's my understanding, and I just found this out, that as people move on to other jobs, or if they are working more than one job, we at the county are subject to paying them unemployment if they leave our employ. So that's why I was asking the question. Okay, thank you. Next, the director's report.
As I've mentioned before, I have nothing that requires action, just things that I wanted to bring the commission up to speed with. We are moving forward with, as you may have heard, we're moving forward with the deer harvest on Power Island. And that's been met with some challenges in the newspaper. And there was one item that I'd like to address. I was the subject of the editorial in regards to this issue last Friday. And in there it stated that I believe it said Jones declined comment. The way I work with local media is if anyone calls and asks if I'd answer some questions in regards to an issue, In order to cover my bases, I always tell them I'd be happy to take time out of my schedule to respond to any questions they have via email or via fax, as I always have. Or if it's a television camera, I'm always willing to be filmed with the comments that I make in regards to any issue. So I did want to clarify that. The story was also in the Traverse City Business Ticker, and the reporter there called me and asked me if I'd be willing to answer some questions. I gave her the same answer and was able to provide her answers to 10 or 12 different questions that made for a very positive story. So I wanted to bring that up to the commission. I've also been asked to be part of a TART Trails subcommittee that includes our Grand Traverse County Planning Department to discuss some alternative funding opportunities through TIF funds and some possible brownfield funding to complete the Boardman Lake Trail. So this is kind of an exploratory group determining whether or not that's a reliable option for helping TART fulfill one of their strategic priorities. I also wanted to let the commission know that I'll be in a meeting 2 weeks from now with both Dennis Aloya as well as Tim Nelson from NMC in regards to policy governance for the Parks and Recreation Commission. And once that meeting's transpired, I'll be happy to give you an update. Or Al, if you want to sit down, I'd be happy to sit down and discuss that item with you. So that's kind of where I'm at, and that's my director's report.
All right. Jason, I'm going to move us backwards a few months. When we had Habitat for Humanity renting Howe Arena, and the Tea Party had rented the pavilions. And I seem to recall that Commissioner Doran said, are you going to be working with Bob Cooney on structuring a lease or changing a lease so that we are not put in that position again, so that people who rent our pavilion understand that it only has a certain capacity. What is the status of that?
I don't recall that. I thought that was a management issue. I'd be happy to check the meeting minutes and check the notes. I haven't moved forward with it.
It wasn't a formal motion, but you had said that you were going to work with Bob Cooney, and so that people who do rent the pavilion understand that it only holds so many people, so that we don't run into that type of problem again.
That's not the way I understood it, so I haven't moved forward with it at all.
Okay. All righty. This is a time for our second public comment. Seeing no public. Notices and commissioner comments. You have your minutes from the RFQ subcommittee. We are going to move forward and make a recommendation to the Parks Commission. We have also minutes from the Performance Metrics Subcommittee. I have not read those, and am I to assume that we're going to get recommendations from the subcommittee?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any notices or comments from any other commissioner?
I do have a question about something that Pete brought up, and this has troubled me, I guess, since I started on the commission, and that is resolution of complaints. So we talked about the one with regard to baseball, but we do get these communications about the pool. We have one about the handicap accessibility at Twin Lakes, and I suppose we, as food for thought, do we have an obligation to address every complaint? Is that a director responsibility, do you feel? And because we made a motion to address specifically a baseball complaint, but that would not be fair to the other complaints that we receive if we only address baseball complaints. Yet we could spend our lives addressing complaints as a commission if that's the way we move. Typically a director's responsibility, I would think. But I raise that as a question that I have no answer to. I'd be open to your comments.
Commissioner Doyer?
Yeah, I have some comments on that. I think, just this one complaint on the baseball program, through nobody's fault that I can see, several months have gone by, and nobody's contacted the complainant. I think maybe this is a county administrator function, and maybe there needs to be some policy when a complaint comes in, that either the department director deals with it, or in this case, since the department director is mentioned by name in the letter, I would think Dennis ought to contact this woman, and do it quickly. I mean, that's one thing that, with customer complaints, the quicker you get on them, the better the person feels, that at least somebody's listening. I think we're kind of behind the 8 ball now with this one. But I would suggest that maybe a more global answer to this come up. I think probably there are other complaints that come in about other departments, and maybe there ought to be some scheme at the county administrator level to deal with this, and deal with it quickly.
Maybe Dave and I could talk with, when we talk with Dennis, we could see, how does he normally deal with these types of things? Does he have a process, or how do they deal with him at the road commission?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. It just perplexes me a little bit.
I think you're right, exactly right. I do think that we should not be responding to every single complaint that we get. There should be an absolute, a process. And I do think it's administration's job, really, to deal with complaints. Certainly, we should be aware of them, because if there is something that we can change, even if it's moving a bush so a parking space is easier, I mean, I'm just tossing that out there, but we should be aware of the complaints, but I don't know that this body should necessarily be responding to them.
Yeah, I thought that we would just ask Dennis to look at that one, but he apparently wants us to look at it for some reason.
There's something wrong there.
I'll give him a call. Commissioner Karstens?
Is this a time for us to continue comment?
Yes, it is.
I'm glad you brought up the situation with regard to the pavilion and the excess of number of people that showed up in terms of it. I think the capacity is 36 or something like that, or
It's 50.
or 50. But to remedy that situation, does it call for a policy statement from this board? Is it the Rules Committee? We should have something in place that would control the number of people who have access as a result of renting the pavilion. And how do we do that?
Commissioner Doran?
Well, don't they get a permit or a license to use the pavilion?
They do.
Okay, and then same with Twin Lakes, same with other facilities. The director, to answer Bob's question, I think the way it should be handled is the director and the attorney, Bob Cooney, should draft that thing to protect the county, the Parks and Recreation Commission, as well as let the user know what the limitations are. When you get a problem like this, take another look at the document. Now you know you better put in some capacity or some notice of how many cars you can bring, or...
And I thought we had asked that be done.
Apparently, it isn't clear, so maybe I would like to suggest that somehow this be addressed so that it's proactive, so that we don't have another situation.
Yeah, because, once Friends of Ice are done with their hockey season, the arena will be rented out again, and we could very easily end up in a very similar situation.
And Habitat for Humanity may be coming back, but
Yes.
they may be hesitant to do so unless we do take care of this situation, so.
Commissioner Larson?
Well, I do, I've thought often about the comment Commissioner Doran made that evening, that it's a public park which charges no admission, and so they secured and paid for use of the pavilion, which they did use, but there is no restriction to how many people come. There's not a fire marshal issue. As many people can come to the park as they want to on any given day. I would find it difficult to restrict the number of people that could use a pavilion. If you've got a family reunion that has 45 members, which 9 are not going to come to the family reunion? I just don't see a policy that's going to be usable in multiple situations.
If memory serves me, I think the real issue was making sure that if the arena is rented, that the renter of the arena is aware that, you know, the
That's reasonable,
pavilion may also be rented. People also are coming to use the park. There are swim lessons, there are baseball games, whatever. I think that was, I'm trying to remember this
Yeah,
conversation.
that sounds
Jason?
right, that's reasonable.
This situation is a one-time thing. We've had several events going on in the arena for several years, and we've had multiple rentals at the Civic Center facility. This was a one-time thing. Do things need to be addressed? Yeah, I'll talk with Bob Cooney, and what we're going to address is the entrance and the exit opportunity for the large rental group. That was the biggest concern with Habitat for Humanity. And that's where the gray area was, and remembering back to that issue, is that their patrons did not have access to get into the facility. So that's what I'll address with Bob Karstens. I think this is predominantly a management issue, and it was a one-time issue. You know, we've had several times where the pavilion's been rented during a large Howe Arena event, and it's never been an issue until this 1 year, due to some very unusual politically charged issue. So, yeah, I'm happy to address it with Bob. I think it's predominantly a management issue based on what's being utilized or who's renting those facilities from us. And this is something that we've done the same thing out at Twin Lakes now that we have a pavilion to rent out there, and the number of people who actually rent that facility now for weddings. So I think this is something that we've already improved. Could we add a new clause to the leases for the arena? No problem, but I'm going to be adding it.
Just to let them
During
know that
entrance.
it's a public park and there's no guarantee that it's not going to be
And
full.
that's stated in there. They have non-exclusive use of facilities other than Howe Arena. And the big issue with Habitat for Humanity was an entryway issue. And that's what I'll address with them.
Was there a parking issue at all then?
There was some minor issues with parking.
There
but
was a
they're
lack of parking that day.
There was lack of parking, but the issue was whether or not people could get in.
But even if you could get in, if there was no way to park, that might have made people say, well, we might as well leave. And so, anyway, okay.
All right. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Galbraith?
I don't know if it's more of a question than a comment. The draft minutes for the RFQ subcommittee, if there's like small changes.
Oh, we'll address them at our next meeting and make whatever changes. And then they will be finalized minutes. These are just drafts.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
And I had to get the drafts out within 7 days, and our meeting was...
Oh, yeah. Oh,
so I
yeah.
met the 7 days.
No, absolutely. No. Question answered. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right. All in favor, aye. We're adjourned.